Welcome back after the lunch break, everybody. Our next submitter is Northlands Regional Council, and we see we've got 4 presenters. I think we've got 2 groups of evidence, is that correct? So we've got Ingrid Konduma, Justin Murphy, good afternoon, Joseph Musa, and Matthew DeVue. Right, so, and are you all wanting to say something, or is it will we just those people who
Matt and I will speak as a summary of evidence, but then we've got Justin as an expert in the regional policy statement and was involved in its development, so he's more context on the planning instruments, and Joe is our rivers manager who has had local knowledge of flood modelling and the flood protection works around this area, so he's here questions for the committee.
We'll put ourselves in your hands, and you can make it.
Okay. Kia ora koutou, ko Ingrid Konduma, I'm a senior planner at Urban Rezoning Requests. My evidence was largely in regard to the applicability of the regional policy statement. I'm not a technical flood hazard expert. Mr. Boyle's evidence will address the actual technical details in the flood modelling and more on national best practice in flood management. Obviously, taking my evidence as pre-circulated evidence as read, just in summary, my opinion is that rezoning of land to provide for more intensive development within areas prone to flood hazards is not consistent with the regional policy statement for Northland direction, particularly in regard to the requirement to avoid inappropriate new development in the 10 and 100-year flood hazard areas. The recent NRC updated modelling confirms that matched flood hazard areas still apply and may in some cases be more significant, for example in the proposed light industrial area in Waipapa. I therefore recommend that the area proposed for rezoning to light industrial is reduced to that outside the identified flood hazard as detailed in the maps attached to my evidence. And that in doing so, this would better give effect to the direction to avoid inappropriate new development. The request to rezone the property referred to as the Kerikeri-Waipapa orange site for residential development raises a number of concerns. The uncertainty over the final design of flood mitigation works and the level of service that could be achieved raised doubts over the ability to realise the purpose and objectives of the zoning on this site if it were changed to allow for residential development. The level of residual risk that would remain is also uncertain, and this would potentially place an ongoing burden of cost and uncertainty on future owners as they are required to assess and mitigate residual natural hazard risks through the resource and builder consent processes. Due to the level of uncertainty, I'm unable to conclude that rezoning this site will be consistent with the requirement to avoid inappropriate development detailed in the regional policy statement. I support the officer's recommendations in section 5.3 of the section 42A report, and where he recommends declining the rezoning request for the fresh orange land. So that's my summary of the evidence that was presented. I'll hand over to Mr. DeVue to talk a little more about the technical aspects of that.
Kia ora tātou. My name is Matthew DeVue. I am an environmental consultant been asked by Northland Regional Council to provide evidence to support our submission. I assume you've read it. My background is I'm a scientist. I'm not a flood modeller, but I do work a lot with flood modelers and I understand the technicalities involved. I largely work in natural hazards and climate change adaptation, and I sat in Joe's team for a number of years as the natural hazards advisor at Northland Regional Council. I've got a short statement that summarises my evidence. So as you know, the Northland Regional Council is responsible for controlling the use of land for the purposes of avoiding or mitigating natural hazards. We carry out this function in 2 main ways. Firstly, providing information about natural hazard risks in the region, such as flood hazard risk maps, and setting policy principally in the regional policy statement. We also, we as being the Regional Council, have a flood management program. This draws on the hazard modelling, but also undertakes works to reduce the damage from, or the reduce risks from flooding. And this is largely through river management actions and flood protection schemes. NRC in this particular catchment have undertaken a range of work over the last couple of decades to understand, firstly, and secondly, to address flooding, including setting up a governance group, undertaking significant amount of hydraulic flood modelling from 2012 till the present day, undertaking minor river works, and undertaking investigations into catchment scale flood mitigations, including conceptual design for the so-called K3A dam and the Kerikeri River Spillway. It's important to note that the economic and feasibility evaluation of those two proposed schemes above have led to both proposals being unacceptable to the governance group. Recent flood modelling undertaken this year shows that the K3A dam does have the potential to reduce flood depths and extents to some degree on existing properties with development potential, as well as land currently zoned as rural. However, many areas where overland flow paths exist, such as in the Waipapa industrial area and the Brownlee site, are projected to remain flood prone due to the characteristics of the catchment. And I would note that most of the catchment lies on a lava flow, and so you will notice that it's very, very flat, and historic flow paths of the rivers result in the overtopping from one stream in a flood condition to another stream. And this is what I mean by overland flow paths. Also, the modelling of a full development scenario does lead to increasing flooding for some areas, but this modelling does not include land raising or other earthworks that are commonly associated with industrial development. Regarding the proposed district plan, I'm of the opinion that the rezoning of flood-prone land to enable development intensification increases risk and is not consistent with the provisions in the regional policy statement. Specifically for the Waipapa industrial estate, rezoning of land in Waipapa to extend the industrial estate is occurring in areas known to be flood-prone with few options for mitigation. Development is likely to lead to an increase in local flooding due to the increase in surface runoff. The likely raising of building platforms during development, which is difficult to assess or control at the site scale during the consenting process, will reduce storage in the floodplain, block overland flow paths, and increase risk elsewhere. While the unbuilt K3A dam has the potential to reduce flood extents to some degree, the area of the historic flow path from the Kerikeri River to the Whiriwhiratoa stream remains flood prone. Rezoning in flood-prone areas can send market signals and creates the expectation for full development. Regarding the Kiwi Fresh Orange submission, in light of the recent North Island weather events, greenfields development in floodplains using engineered protection is not appropriate and is out of step with. There is the potential for significant residual risk with the proposal. The design of the floodplain presented is not sufficiently developed to warrant the removal of flood overlays to the site due to uncertainties in the modelling and construction feasibility that create the potential for significant and material changes in design that could affect the type and level of flood mitigation provided. The proposal is not aligned with catchment-wide flood management planning that would be developed by the Regional Council, and it is unclear how the resulting scheme would be integrated and managed following vesting to the Regional Council. There is insufficient evidence to show how impacts on the state highway will be mitigated and how any potential changes to the state highway might affect the functioning of the proposed floodway. And finally, there is the potential for significant up and downstream impacts to properties, existing properties, and the transport network that I believe are insufficiently explored. In conclusion, I believe the proposed rezoning in the Waipapa industrial estate and the KFO submission increase the likelihood of maladaptation and increasing risk. Both show a lack of alignment with wider catchment flood risk planning and have the potential to create a need for additional flood mitigations to manage risks to affected upstream and downstream properties, as well as the state highway network. Thank you.
Your other commissioners want to say something now? Just answer the question.
No, happy to just.
Yeah. How much consultation had any of the submitters related to that Waipapa area had with you guys? as part of their submissions, lodging their submissions for rezonings?
I'm not aware of what you mean.
I mean, if you look at the Kiwi Fresh Orange one, for example, has that been part of their, I mean, I don't know, has that been part of what they've done? Was they took the NRC about the, potential flood issues at Waipapa Kerikeri?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't.
The only interaction was that the working group recommended that the spillway be modelled in the latest round of modelling this year. But that was to be paid by the developers, the Kiwi Fresh Orange developers, but they declined to progress that model run at the last stage.
I mean, on the face of it, and on the face of evidence that we've heard, that spillway, as you referred to, through the middle of the site, there's huge implications for development in nature on the site. But you don't have any particular knowledge of that or the details on the proposal at all?
Other than what was...
Yeah. It's not a criticism of what you folks say, it's just seeking information.
We only, as far as I know, we only received the information that was provided through the
So your concerns directed towards the Kiwi Fresh Orange rezoning and also the other industrial, wanting to go from heavy to light or light to heavy?
Our primary submission raised the issue of we opposed upzoning in the areas that were prone to flood hazards. And one of the areas we particularly identified was extension of the light industrial area out into what is now a general rural zone. So continuing the incremental development out from the existing industrial area there.
Yeah, it certainly gives the appearance of prevention.
Yeah, just thanks. On that extension of the Waipapa industrial zoning, and your suggested, I mean, your maps are really helpful at the back of your evidence, thank you. Your suggested where you draw the line is not on a cadastral boundary, for example. And I mean, I'm interested to hear the officer's response in due course, but is that where you've drawn the line of where the zoning should be? Is that a natural feature? Is that a
It's largely following the edge of it's just to avoid the area that's subject to the 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 year flood. So in some cases it would involve a split zoning of the property.
the property?
Yeah.
Okay. And has that happened previously?
Split zonings do occur.
They do occur. Yeah. Okay. And if it was to stay industrial zoning across the whole property, are there other parts of the district plan that would help mitigate potential flooding effects like setbacks and what have you?
In terms of rules and controlled development.
Yeah.
We've actually just been down and had another look down there before coming in here. Obviously, a lot of land has been raised here,
Right.
but the implications of that infilling of the floodplain has been described, and the impact of blocking overland flow paths and the ongoing effects of that on the whole catchment.
Yeah, it's like squeezing what you're doing here and the effect goes down there. Right, okay. Yeah, no, that's pretty clear in your evidence, thank you. I think that's why.
And I think Commissioner Foy has some non-KF related questions for you.
So in terms of Waipapa and its industrial area, we all know that's sort of the Kerikeri CBD, the big box developments. I guess in terms of timeframes for NRC, there's been some potential mitigation. It's talked about a dam and different flooding options, and I know Kaitai has had quite a lot of flood protection works. In terms of timeframes, do you have any anticipated timeframes that something might be done within that catchment to avoid mitigate flood hazards in terms of NRC? I know that the finance decision is made at a council level, but I know there's also a working group.
Yeah, so currently we don't have anything in our long-term plan in the next 3 years. It is sitting further out for investigation. So our early modeling is really just conceptual modeling. So so there'd be a lot more work would need to be done before we got it into the long term. And with the working group, when it was originally planned, nearly 10 years ago, it was shelved because, we didn't see the benefit at the time, or the cost benefit wasn't there. So we haven't progressed it further.
As an example, how long from sort of the concept, the high-level concept you talked about, to actually delivering a physical outcome is in other flood areas and flood mitigation works that NRC has done? I know I'm aware of the Kaitaia one, there's also a modern one. Is it 10 years, 20 years from start to completion of those flood works? What's your experience in that?
So in the case of Kaitaia, so we started that group in 2006, 2005, 2006. We started big work, now I'm just going by memory, but it would have been probably 8 or 10 years. We had a suite of options, worked with the group, and then put it in a long-term plan. So it was probably, it'd be close to 10 years before we actually started doing physical work.
And how long was the physical work? How many years is it?
We're still working on it today. So that's what 2025. So we've been at it for nearly 20 years. Yes. Yeah. But there, that's we spent nearly $15 million.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. De Boer, in your evidence, it's filling in some gaps for me. You refer to the K3A dam. What is the K3A dam? Whereabouts? It's not a thing, it was a proposed thing.
Yes.
And can you tell me roughly where it was then and what its function was?
If you don't mind, I'll start and then I'll hand over to Joe because Joe will know the details. So the work, the Kerikeri-Waipapa River Liaison Working Group is the governance entity for the catchment. They requested that NRC explore options for managing flood risk in the catchment. So there is an evidence-based process. Firstly, the exploration of options, including channel management or river works or catchment detection. Anyway, a contractor did this investigation and looked at, I think, around 20 different sites, something like that, within the upper catchment to look at detention dams. Of those, there was a feasibility assessment done, and of those, it was narrowed down to a handful, and K3A Dam came out as the most suitable site. And this is, maybe I'll hand over to Joe to describe exactly where this is and what it involves.
So during that process, we looked at detention both on the Totra and on the Kerikeri River. And out of that, there was probably about, and I'm just going by memory again, about 10 or so on the Kerikeri and 6 or 8 on the Totra. Out of that, K3A stacked up with the best cost benefit. And then from there, we we had Opus do a first round of modeling and then progressed into another set of modeling with Riley Consultants, which are dam consultant, they're one of the top dam consultants in the dam.
So just to wrap up, a detention dam is like a water storage dam, but it has a hole at the bottom, and that hole gets throttled. So under low flow conditions, the water just flows through. Under high flow conditions, like during a flood, the dam will hold water, but the water still keeps coming out. That's how
And roughly where was it?
So it's on the Kerikeri River, midway up the catchment.
Yeah. And it's west on Upper.
Correct. Yeah. North, yeah.
Northwest. Your understanding for the CAFO proposal I'm still trying to get my head around this, and perhaps Catherine will help clarify matters, but in terms of your understanding, at the moment it's a natural floodway. That floods in at least the 1 in 10, I think, does it regularly flood, or does it only flood certain levels? I think you know you've got 5, 10, 20, 50.
So it would be active, again, probably in the 1 in 10, but certainly there's a defined overland flow path there, and most likely an old paleo channel at one, historic at some point.
My understanding, it's sort of quite wide in some places and then it narrows in others. Or is it generally quite wide?
It is generally quite wide and it narrows down as it gets closer to the waterfall. And
as things become more in size.
Yeah, right? Yeah. There's also overflow on the site from the Kerikeri River itself,
Yes.
on the northern bank.
Yes. And my understanding is that the proposal is to keep it largely unmodified, but there may be some works to it to make it more like a channel.
Sorry, if I may respond. The proposal is, it's, and actually the construction details are missing from the proposal. This is one of our issues with it. But they are proposing an excavated channel. So take earth away and allow the water to mostly flow within the excavated channel, leaving the rest of the site relatively untouched, according to what we understand, which would mean all the water flows through the channel under these flood events. It's unclear the degree to which raised areas next to that channel would be needed, i.e. we would call those stop banks. So it's unclear from the submission how much there would be stop banks used to control the flow, constrain those flood flows to that excavated channel. And there's also uncertainty around how much excavation could be done because there's as I mentioned, there's a lava flow quite close to the surface, a matter of metres below this.
And I think, Mr. Ricks told us earlier today that it might involve some excavation, it might involve some stop banks, or maybe both. And that would be determined at a later date.
That's our understanding of the submission. There is no details on the construction, and this is one of our issues, is that without knowing exactly the type of construction, like for example, if it was only built with stop banks because they encountered subsurface rock near to the surface.
As you said, this is a lava flow environment, so
it is.
Is that possible?
Probably not right to the surface, but we do know that there's bedrock somewhere around 2 metres deep, and the channel is expected to be around 2 metres deep, so that's cutting it pretty fine, in my opinion. If there was bedrock exposed, and to get the hydraulic flows right, they had to build stop banks. Well, all of a sudden you've got development behind stop banks, which without having greater clarity around the construction feasibility, that the type of construction will affect the kind of residual risk. And that would also affect where the flood zone would be. So in our mind, it's inappropriate to remove the flood layer, the flood hazard layer from the district plan and replace it with something that's unknown currently because the construction details are absent.
And is there anyone here who can talk about flood modelling?
To some extent, yeah.
Yeah, well, certainly more than I can. It's to be designed for the 1 in 100 year flood. And again, I was asking Mr. Rix's questions. It seems to me that in a period where we're managing climate change and increased weather events and severity, the 1 in 100 year flood is that an unspoken thing in and of itself?
Yeah, so we generally try to design for the 1 in 100 plus climate change.
Plus climate change.
So typically another 20% rainfall.
That's 20%.
Of course, that changes. We just HERDS for the latest HERDS models out. So HERDS is the high intensity rainfall duration. So it's the NEMA, and prior modeling was done on HERDS version 3. Now we're using the latest surge, so there'll be more rainfall in the current modeling.
Right. And so it's designed to that level of tolerance. Well, the design that we have is to that level of
According to
to that level of tolerance.
if I may, for example, other flood schemes of this, not exactly this type, but around the country, Lower Hutt, 440-year flood, Carrada, 500-year. The secondary stock banks for Christ on the Waimakere, 10,000-year protection. So a 1 in 100-year protection is by no means, it's kind of like the minimum standard. You wouldn't design them less than that unless you really had to. But to propose new greenfield development behind a 1 in 100-year protection it's not really current best practice.
No, I think that sort of puts my question into the context. Just in regards to Kaitaia, whereabouts are they sitting in terms of?
Good question. Yeah. So prior to undertaking this work, we calculated about a 1 in 30-year protection. 2007, we overtopped in about a 1 in 27-year event. So roughly about 1 in 30. We strive to get 1 in 100 plus climate change, but it wasn't feasible. So we're at the 1 in 100-year level. It would just be too expensive. And that's 1 in 100 through town, but 1 in 20 in the farm ones in the farming area.
We had evidence last week saying that another area of land that has higher elevation and out of the Kaitaia is strictly zoned residential because so much the existing residential land in Kaitaia is compromised and like hasn't been quantified. But in Kaitaia, it seems to me that the mitigation required for that existing residential zone has to be done at catchment levels. It's not individual sites or floor levels. It's about containing the Kaitaia. So that might be a bit simplistic, but that can be that.
Well, I guess, yeah, in that situation, we had an existing town that we're trying to protect. Yeah. And we're looking at the maximum protection we could get within, which is reasonable, and that we landed on 1 in 100 for the township, and then just 1 in 20 for the farmland.
Yes, okay. Up to me. Just come on. Any questions? So your concerns about upstream and downstream, you've got concerns about upstream and downstream flooding as a result of these works? Or is it mainly one or the other?
Regarding the KFO.
Yes.
Sorry,
I'm going to KFO.
Yep. Now, so if the KFO proposal went ahead and the flood scheme was designed, now there is the potential for upstream and downstream effects. The whole scheme will be vested to a council. It's not going to remain the property of the developer. Ideally, a whole of catchment flood scheme would be designed, not one that only looks after the properties that are directly surrounding it. There are uncertainties around future works around the state highway network that could create more, less upstream or downstream effects. Secondly, the regional council did investigate the site as a spillway at one point in time and decided to drop the proposal because of increased downstream risk. So even though it was protecting some properties upstream, existing properties up around 30 experienced increased risk downstream. And that was the whole reason why the regional council dropped that proposal. So given our explanation of uncertainties around the modelling, uncertainties around over design events, we are concerned that there could be upstream and downstream increases in risk, and we're not confident that the modelling ties those loose ends together and shows us with confidence that that's not good.
Thanks. Now, if I could just go to the planning settings. You referred to some key provisions on policy 3.9 13711. This is in paragraph 17. And a lot of those talk about subject matter litigation. It sort of gives the proviso of litigation. Given that we've had that New Zealand's faced a number of really extreme ranking events, Gabriel, Auckland anniversary, is that approaching that policy framework still fit for purpose? Or is the regional council thinking, we make everything subject to adequate mitigation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is that primary one about avoiding inappropriate development, and the question does rise what's appropriate, and if you can mitigate it, does that mean that it becomes appropriate? And that is a fundamental question. This regional policy statement came out in 2016, or it was made operative in 2016, probably started consulting on in 12.
Yeah, around then.
So you could say it is possibly at the end of its life, and there are definitely some changes that could probably be updated and affect the current situation better.
Sure. Okay, and there's one more question. When it comes to like industrial land, that is really something that has it's often put to us that industrial land is quite resilient. They can adapt to flooding and can be more resilient than residential and commercial land. Do you accept that in principle? And does that mean that there is possibly an acceptable level of flood risk for industrial land that you wouldn't give to other zones?
I think there definitely is a difference between the risk that's appropriate on the industrial land versus something with residential, say, vulnerable activities, but it's not a free-for-all. We've still got those, you're attempting to mitigate those risks, which has those wider catchment effects. You've still got people that work on those sites. They may be unable to leave because the roadways.
I was going to say the road network plays a role.
You actually lose access, and you might end up being on an island. Your industrial building might be lifted above the flood zone, but you actually can't go home that night because the road's flooded. So there are wider. It's not just because it's industrial, it doesn't matter. And then there's also the additional policy about avoiding hazardous substances being subject to flood hazards, and predictably an industrial site is more likely to contain hazardous substances, which will put them more in that flood path as well.
And I suppose, plan is sort of wrestling with Waipapa is the identified industrial hub of the district. And obviously want to provide for industrial growth along with its urban growth. A lot of other, although that's not necessarily experience, they haven't got much options. So your belief is that land just should not be zoned?
Well, I guess we've laid out that there are significant risks from our point of view that if it were to be rezoned, and that wouldn't be what we'd recommend doing from a road management perspective.
And I'll ask this question, but you may, if you're entitled to say, I don't know how to answer that question. But it's sort of like an elephant in the room when you talk about flooding, and that is the insurance industry. Yep, everyone's looking lots of that. And that is, we often say, it doesn't matter what we zone, the insurance industry will ultimately determine where a lot of activities are based on their risk. Have you got any advice on how that plays into these sorts of things?
Personally, I believe that is true, and that insurance retreat is something that will become increasingly difficult for people to address. I've heard the head of the Insurance Council talk about this, and he believed at that point there was no properties in New Zealand that couldn't get insurance. This was probably a year and a half ago. It may have changed since then, but they could see that time may be coming. Also seen statistics looking at insurance retreats starting somewhere in the major cities in the mid-2030. I can't give you the reference for that. It's just something that I've read. I wouldn't take that as, I can't give you the reference for it, but it was in a presentation that I saw.
It's really hard to report because no one's going to stick their head up and no one will insure my site. So.
But I believe that is true, and that it will become an issue and is an issue that will fall on the ultimate landowner who's left with buying that property and developing it. And as I've said, having to go through that, mitigating any residual hazard risks that are left. If you've got, if it's behind a stock bank, you've got residual risk and overtopping events, and they will be required to address that in their building design. And so that will fall on the ultimate landowner, and that may become quite a burden.
Okay. Thank you. Could you something?
One of my questions, seeing is a burden. NRC do the flood mapping. And then we have our district plan. So you provide us the information. The Auckland Council has their maps not as part of the district plan. My question is, in terms of the regional policy statement in that direction to Whanau District Council, what's your view about that? Because do you think it would be sensible to have that as a non-statutory layer so that every time the hazards are updated, which is happening all the time, as we've heard from the experts today, that we didn't have to go through a Schedule 1 process?
It is a concern. It's something that we have definitely considered, and it came up in the hearings for the Whangarei District Plan as well. Justin provided evidence on that, and it was something that we considered. But relying on the definition, again, can create uncertainty for the landowners. It's not necessarily easy for a landowner to know if they meet the definition of flood hazards. I don't know if you wanted to speak to it.
Yeah, sure. I guess there's a natural justice question with that, how they've done that. I'm not sure how they resolved it. So, as I understand it, they rely on the definition of a hazard zone. They rely on those non-statutory maps to inform, that forms part of the definition. Now, if they go and change that, how does a landowner who is newly affected by that map have a say? I guess that's one of the questions we pondered. With the RPS, can we do this? Can we acknowledge the issue that there are regular updates to flood hazard mapping, local hazard maps as well? But by requiring it to be incorporated as part of the Schedule 1 district plan process, landowners can challenge the validity of that mapping and have done so and challenge those map layers, sometimes successfully. Usually it's quite a technical exercise, but there's that fairness question, then there's the efficiency question. So, yeah, you need to land on the balance of the fairness to the landowner to have a say on what that map looks like if it lands on their property.
Yeah, I mean, the Auckland Council managed to do it. And I suspect what happens is it's pretty hard from a natural justice point of view to say, you've just mapped my property flood hazard after it flooded.
Yeah.
So we added your property to the flooding maps because it flooded in this event that went beyond 100 years. Yeah. And I think that's the logic that all the councils.
In that case, where it has actually they've gone around and taken flood levels after an event, there's probably a lot more rigor to that than a speculative map. This is potentially flood hazard land.
Yeah.
I have a supplementary question to that about the timing of the modelling and the mapping. You have, a great team that goes along with the diggers, does the work, and then you have your other team that does the modelling and mapping. And then that information, after that's done, is given to us. That feeds into our regulatory processes for consent. In terms of the delay, do you wait until the whole project is finished? For example, we've heard today about a 20-year process. Do you wait until the last bucket of dirt is dug and then the information is released and then that's given to us and then we go through our Schedule 1 process and then becomes part of the district plan? Can you comment on how that modelling timing works?
Sure. So in the case of Kaitaia, the works, to be fair, I'm not sure the work will ever be finished in Kaitaia. But we've updated the model several times since then. And I guess until, so we use as-built, because obviously, as you build it, some things may change. So we'll run the as-built through the final model. If that makes sense. So the as-built is actually, after it's built, then we actually survey it. So maybe it was designed to be 20 meters wide and it ends up to be 18 meters wide because of some restrictions. So it wouldn't use the design.
So you've said you wait for an as-built, so it's built, you know what it is. So in the case of Kaitaia, it's not quite built yet, you said that. So that means you wait until it's built, and we're now in 2025. I'm not sure the date that will be completed. We will adopt our, we'll go next year, 2026. When will we actually get the updated flood models? Because what I'm highlighting here is that we'll be adopting this plan without even new flood modelling in it. This is a serious issue. Do you have any response about that?
So we picked up 90% of the as-built, so we'll be running that model relatively soon. So probably within the next year, we'd have that completed. For the majority of the work that we're doing in Kaitaia, this summer season should complete what we had set out. That was the 8-year plan. And then we'll run the as-built through the model. And then develop it for the matching.
I think, is there any planning response about that delay and how it affects the schedule?
Not really. I guess that's the process if the dam is built differently to the design, you can't run a model that doesn't reflect the actual situation. So yes, it is an issue with having to do that Schedule 1 process, I accept that, but we haven't discovered a great way around that. I would say that all of our hazard information that we have, the up-to-date versions, are on our website and publicly available, and further information can be detailed from our rivers team. And with the changes to the WUMA regulations, all that information that we hold must be supplied to district councils. So anyone that is buying a property must have access to that information as well if they're getting a LIM report. So even if the two maps don't match up, all that information that we hold, the most up-to-date, most validated information is available from us and will be required to be included with LIMs in the future very soon. Sometime this month, I think that comes. Part of it is operative now, and the final details are still the last parts of it coming very soon. So even if the maps don't match, both sets of information are there. But I understand that affects your statutory, when you've got it in there as a statutory layer, but it does affect that, and I don't have an answer for that.
Other than perhaps the consent process, unfortunately, maybe someone have to go through that. If there are updated flood models that show a reduced risk, they may still have to go through a consent process, but at least, I guess, they're not put through the cost of extra mitigations if that flood protection is there. So it's a little awkward, cumbersome, recognise that.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we have any further questions. Well, thank you very much for all very long. And yes.
Some questions and information.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I noticed there's just a couple of things that I think Chris might have some questions and clarifications as well. So I'll start with two things to first, Mr. Wicks, and then we'll come back. So I see that the estimate at this stage for Kerikeri is 50 million. That's at this stage.
When it was initially modelled and costed by the dam consultants, Riley, and 2017 or something?
I think 2014.
2014. It came in between 17 and 20 million. But this is only to do the physical works. So it doesn't include legal costs, property purchase, consenting, etc. Which is, in the experience of Northland Regional Council, the Kotuki Street Dam went from an initial cost estimate of 2 million, which is from Riley, same consultants. When it was finished, 11 million. There's a 550% increase. So probably 50 million is a conservative estimate.
And I just wanted to, I know we did some questions last week, couldn't quite see when you did the updated model, the re-units to Waitotoa Drive and how they extends related to the area as well. Couldn't quite make it up. Was there any substantial change in the area?
That's a good question. We're working through it now. I mean, our team's working through it, but
Like I said,
yeah,
that's right.
And I think Farmhouse District has those model results now, so you should be able to answer that internally. Yeah, thanks, question.
A lot of the panels are actually I guess was probably the point.
Mr. Rex want me to address a question to this?
Is it okay to ask a question about the Kerikeri with the floodplain modelling NRC carried out? That's Mr. Dapur. Paragraph 21, we talk about a 2016 option for a spillway and floodway on the Kerikeri River was investigated, which was similar to the KFI proposal, and that it resulted in increases of flooding around 30 downstream properties. I was just wondering whether you could talk through the similarities or differences between what you did in 2016 assessment and what KFI proposal.
Yep, I wasn't there.
That's a fair question.
So I'll start, and again, I'll hand over to Joe, who was there. There are similarities in the geographic area. Obviously, there's a paleo channel. The river used to run there, so it's an obvious spot to reduce flood risk. The objective of the NRC spillway was to reduce upstream flooding around the industrial estate and Waitotoa Drive, right? It operated in a slightly different manner. It was also an excavated stream, a channel. There was a design developed, and there was modelling done. The initial modelling showed a slight increase in flooding for 2 downstream properties, and we thought, great. However, the hydrology team, during a significant flood event, did some gauging in the lower reaches below and found that the flow rates were significantly underestimated in our original modelling. So when we recalibrated the model, it showed that about 30 properties were affected by around half a metre or something of flooding. This was unacceptable because the cost of mitigating the flooding to those properties would be more than the benefit or the cost of the scheme itself. Do you have anything else to add?
no, that's pretty much. We were lucky. I guess we were lucky enough to catch those gaugings because it's very difficult in Northland. The peaks are so quick, that actual storm. There was 2 storms that happened on a Thursday, and we missed it, and then on a Friday, our guys were able to pick it up, and that's led, then we put it back into the model. It's about an 800 million increase.
Maybe for the commissioners, a gauging is where you measure the level and the flow of the river, and where you don't have an automated system, you have to get out with a little boat and measure. So that's
All the questions from council officers?
I do have one more thing, Mr. Chair. We have been having discussions with NRC, and they have asked some very valid questions about particularly those rezoning. We have actually discovered a report that did some risk assessment. So essentially, to simplify to the basic core versus velocity modelling for that area.
This is the industrial area.
The industrial area. We have freshly got it in our hands. I suspect it's something we probably should discuss with NRC, particularly in the light of some the amended modelling that's just been completed as well. So I might suggest that we add it to the long list of discussions that we might have before we close on this matter.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you happy to read that into the right of reply, having, I think, and engaging with the NRC before you do that?
Yeah, we'll see, Mr. Chair, like frankly, there could be some implications that we can't.
You probably want
Right.
to share, you might want to share that with the submitters with those properties too.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I don't think that it only relates to those sort of particular area that is probably very limited number of submitters. But I think, you know, NRC have,
I think we're getting some evidence from Mr. Sansel on this tomorrow.
okay. You'd certainly like to have
LB Family Investments.
I mean, it's quite possible that it might require a model run and further risk assessment methodology run through it, which we might simply not be able to do. But we might be able to have a discussion on that matter.
Okay. Well, again, thank you very much for your evidence and your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good on you.
So our next submitter is the Bay of Islands Kerikeri Golf Club, and that is Mr. Graham Brown and David Leah. Good afternoon. Please come up and have a seat at the table. So we can handle these two pieces of paper. These are your written statements. You're entitled to read them to us.
Or no.
We haven't written them, obviously.
No.
Who would like to go?
Can I start?
I've been looking forward to hearing from you. So
Thank you, and we hope that we're short and succinct and very clear.
Okay.
So look, I'm great.
Well, I asked, can you identify which one of you is Graham? Which one's David?
I'll start. I'm Graham. Right, I'm Graham Brown, and I was president of the golf club when the submission was developed. And thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. So basically, the submission to the council was made after receipt from Kiwi Fresh Orange of the intention of them to submit on a rezoning application for the development they were planning to do. We received this notice, I think, a few days before closing of submissions. We took advice and put together this submission that we received. I think it's pretty clear that we, at that stage, had no view on the development itself, but we noticed in their submission that they were proposing a road through the golf club, which there had been really no significant discussion with the government. The club wrote to the agents of Kiwi Fresh Orange, and requested that the road be removed from their submission. In fact, the submission from them went in with it. So we're conscious that there's been significant time passing since our submission, and I'd like to hand over to colleague David Neal to talk about really where the club stands now.
Good afternoon. My name is David Neal, and I'm a member and currently a club management committee member of the Kerikeri Golf Club. And I'm here today to advise this hearing of the current position of the club members regarding the KFO development proposals as they may affect the golf club. In April 2025, club members became aware that the chairman of the golf club had made a submission on behalf of the club management committee to the draft spatial plan, expressing support for the scenario F proposal and commenting positively on the use of club land for roading. Members had been given no opportunity for discussion or confirmation of this position. Some members who were concerned that the Far North District Council could have an incorrect understanding of the club's actual position called an extraordinary general meeting to hear the details of the proposal. Over 100 members present at the meeting on 29th of May 2025 resolved that A, the meeting strongly objects to any alteration of the current golf hole designs. B, very strongly objects to the roading through the course. C, opposes the Kiwi Fresh Orange Company submission 554 to the proposed Far North District Council plan. These resolutions have previously been conveyed to the Far North District Council and the developer as noted in my letter dated 5th of June 2025. As at this date, 6th of October, this is the position of the membership of the club, making it extremely unlikely that the membership would approve the use of any club land to aid in any aspect of the scenario F proposal. We note that the scenario F proposal has been designated as a contingent future growth area. With a development to go ahead in the future, the expectation is that the developer would be required to meet the requirements of the GRZ P8 Part E and provide adequate setback, fencing, screening and landscaping to adequately address potential conflicts where the club land and developers' land are adjacent. We see potential problems arising such as hazards due to golf balls exiting the club land and entering the developer's land, the need to provide security measures to help prevent animal and human access onto the club land from the developer's land, potentially resulting in vandalism and damage to greens, bunkers, etc. And C, the desire of the public to take a shortcut to the Kerikeri township by trespassing across the club land. We note these issues because these have all proven to be of concern in other developments adjacent to golf courses. Thank you for this opportunity to confirm the Kerikeri Golf Club members' position by way of this submission.
Thank you. Would you like to remain so we can ask you some questions?
Certainly.
What about 20 questions?
Look, we've got all evening.
No, thanks, it's pretty clear on that.
Okay, I've got another one. I'm trying to get my head around how the road would actually affect the golf course, and in particular, the actual physical fairway, whether the road goes across the top or around the bottom of the boat. Have you got an understanding as to whether you're an 18-hole golf course at the moment, is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you remain an 18-hole golf course?
Yes, we would, but the proposal provides Kerry Fresh is proposing to build 3 new golf holes to replace 3 that we would lose if a road went through. Now, these particular golf holes are unique to, but pretty unique to our golf club, and it's one of the aspects that makes our golf club quite different to a lot of others and makes it very attractive for people to be attracted to the town anyway. They love the Kerikeri Golf Club, and it's a constant comment that we get from greenfield visitors, and it's one of the attractions why I came to this town, because I love the golf course. The road itself will take out 3 actual golf holes, and they've offered to replace those, which we've walked the area where they propose to do it. They're interesting, but they don't replace our current holes. So they will affect 2 other golf holes that would need adjusting as well.
So it would still be an 18-hole golf course, but your concern is that its attractiveness and usability would be affected.
Absolutely. And the fact of a road going through a golf club, trust me, is, I've played at a course like that before, and the distraction from traffic and road noise is terrible. It's not one of the things that you go to play golf for. They have that happen. You know, road noise.
Yes. We're looking to do site visit to the entire AFO land on Thursday. Would you also allow us to visit the golf course, obviously, with discretion? Perhaps and maybe, and is there anything you'd like us to particularly have a look at if we were allowed to visit?
I'm sure you're most welcome to visit, but I cannot speak for the committee, because while I'm a member of the committee, I've been forbidden to speak on behalf of the golf club.
Once bitten, twice shy.
So I am speaking entirely in my own.
Can you say what are the holes that are affected? What are the,
Sorry?
yes, what are the particular holes that are affected?
13, 14 and 15 would go. 12 would be affected, it'd have to be adjusted, and 15 would have to be adjusted, and it almost completely destroyed that whole lot, I think. But the 3 replacement holes are nothing like. One of them is not a bad golf hole, but the other 2 are just they would, and remember, you put in 3 new golf holes, it would take 20 years to get them back to the same condition that we've got now. It would be an adjustment of that, because it takes a long time for the greens to settle, and it's really not a desirable feature.
I think a request to visit perhaps should be made to the manager of the course.
We'll get our
That would be the appropriate first step, I think.
Yes.
What I think we'll do is we'll get our highly efficient area administrator to contact the manager of the golf club.
Yes.
On behalf of the committee, the panel.
I do the details.
Request, you don't need to be there for very long, so probably an hour, so we can, as much as we can.
Preferably on a fine day.
Yes, but we might have to take what we get.
That's my question you asked, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your attendance, and we might see you.
Thank you. I'm glad that we were able to help you catch up sometime.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next submitter is Fred. Here, and you've got Joe Carr with you. Good afternoon again, Mr. Carr. Good afternoon, Chair.
Panel, staff. Afternoon. Is that the bit hard to read there?
Yes, can you see that? And I don't have a printed copy, I'm sorry, but do you have?
Oh, I got some hard copies here.
Okay, I'll cover it.
Yeah, I think we've got some evidence from the Secretary.
There's a statement of evidence that came to you earlier, right, that we've got.
Correct, and I've also just popped this document online, if someone like there is a printed copy here. If you want
Some of the payments.
Mr. Carr, you would have noticed that we did visit your property in March.
Oh, thank you.
We managed to avoid the capitals.
Oh, you've got a barbecue, one.
We admired them from a distance.
Thank you very much. Where'd you start? I might.
Yes, well, we're in your hands, so.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Fred's show. We've done it jointly in a way, in that I chair the Kerikeri-Waipapa River Group, and one of our meetings we resolved to make a submission to this process, put one in, and then informed by NRC staff that delegated authority to do it, and we have to do it private individuals. So that's where we get to here. So I've been a regional councillor for 4 terms. I currently chair the Urban River working group, Kerikeri-Waipapa working group, and also alternate for the Pongarara group. Started my term on regional council in 2007. To encourage the council to set up 27 natural priority river groups, which I was ex officio to them all. So I sort of lifted NRC into the active catchment management phase, and yeah, I just want them stuff done. So that's where I come from. I'd like to thank our staff who left. We put quite a bit of pressure on getting the delivery of the report. It's just been presented today, and I would say that there is a level of government support for progressing this catchment, which staff indicated it was $430,000 into our long-term plan that's spread over 3 years through this current year, so that we can actually get this work done. And the work was focus on the viability of the K3A dam. So there's quite a lot of government support for that. The report that Mr. DeVore presented hasn't been peer reviewed by anyone with appropriate qualifications to do so. And on this panel here, there was no one with NRC, no one with those appropriate qualifications. So I think it's pretty important that someone does complete a peer review. And I'll just say the reason why it wasn't done was probably because we're under pressure. Because NRC has always had a policy of, before it steps forward in some area, of actually getting some good scrutiny done independently. Hence, with the overland flow path that's going down through, they invested through the Brown property. It wasn't until that was independently peer reviewed we actually found that it wouldn't work. Well, if it did work, it was going to have adverse effects. So, if there's a single message that I think would be a good investment for the Far North District Council to peer review this current work by Board of Technologies. Because apart from this planning process, because the activities that have happened there in Waipapa industrial zone, there's a fair bit of exposure to the council. Because flooding is a big risk. Okay, and the other thing is that the study that's just been completed has identified significant benefits from the K3A dam, and when it's compared with when they did the status quo evaluation and the same modelling, they've established what the flood levels now be with the birds forward scenario, and you've actually got an opportunity to actually compare what the K3A dam would do to the lower catchment compared with what's actually the risk now. And there's a significant benefit, and that benefit hasn't been investigated, because that benefit could actually be exploited with some level of funding protection for the Waipapa industrial area, and the work that's come forward to date hasn't done that work. And I think that's an absolutely critical piece of work that needs to be done, because even if increased areas weren't allowed, and they may well be able to be allowed for industrial activity, I think we'd end up with a higher level of protection than we've got. In fact, I'm a layman, but I'm quite sure we will. That's pretty important, and there's discussion too. We have $50 million estimate of price, riders could very easily review that price with current engineering inflation and come up with a pretty accurate desktop assessment. And I've asked our council to get that done, but it hasn't been done yet. And when we talk about benefit cost ratio, it's something the Farmers District Council could do, because we need to know what the actual capital value of the properties and the insured values of the properties that could be have the flood risk reduced, so you know the affordability of the scheme. So there's a couple of loose ends there that I believe would be very helpful. So on Thursday, the Kerikeri-Waipapa River Group is going to have its first opportunity to actually sit down and discuss this recent work by water technology. We haven't had a discussion about it. And on our group, we've got 3 retired engineers. Fred is one. We also have a very experienced hydraulic engineer on the committee who've been there for a number of years. In fact, I started chairing that committee, I think, about 2007 to 2016. And in that time, we went through, I just recall, we had a number of reports we built on. It was Opus, Hayworth, GHD, Tonkin, and Taylor, and all of them were pointing at the K3A dam, just building, and we had the K3A dam in the long-term plan. And then, I exited council for a couple of terms. But my only comment was it was strongly supported by the River Group in those years, and I'm rather surprised that the same composition of the River Group, essentially the same people, reported to have actually decided not to proceed with it. So I wasn't there, so I can't comment on that, but it was a surprise. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I just think we've got some real responsibilities. I say we, it's both our councils. We've got it's after the event, horses bolted, there's been a whole lot of activity in the area, and a lot of very considerable investment in that catchment, and saying, throwing up our hands in an alarm, this is really the answer now. We've got to do something about it. And so that peer review is very, very important, and it might come up with a solution that's going to help everybody a lot. And as I say, find out what the values are that are going to be compromised without that work, and see how affordable they are. And so I'm very disappointed that because that's just what I've been projecting at Regional Council, that we're not in a position to actually say this is the information. But I do commend the staff for the effort they have put in to provide the evidence they've done today. And I'll leave it there. I agree. I would any questions you have. But Fred, of course, may wish to comment too.
I'll just quickly ask a question. In this statement here, you're asking for a zone, a flood management zone. So Kerikeri-Waipapa flood management zone, possibly in the neighbourhood.
Well, from an engineering point of view, both councils are hamstrung to a degree by not having a special zone to deal with the problems that everybody talks about but doesn't do anything with it. And so I said in my report here, my presentation, that a lot of the aspirations that are in the spatial plan won't actually happen until the basic problem of flooding is addressed. And so my submission is based on the engineering function of what should happen or could have happened. And so it is basically asking for the council or the commission to have the consideration of a special zone established. It's not asking for anything else other in the zone in relation to the other aspirations, but to establish a special zone which will enable the council to administer all the things that need to happen in the flood zone. That includes drainage and everything else. It also includes the reputation of the council itself in being able to put its hand up and say we have got something positive underway. We have declared a zone. In the previous evidence I put in the council of the commission, I've actually detailed my relative experience going back over 30 odd years, 40 years or something. And I've had, although I'm not a hydrologist, but I've had a lifetime's exposure to flooding, the effects of it. And one of my major work that I did was in the Hawke's Bay cyclone bowler. I was the lead engineer that was did the flood hazard mapping component of that, and so my area of responsibility was Route 35, which is the road that goes from Gisborne right up to East Cape. Now, that area was substantially flooded, and it was not sufficiently damaged like the latest cyclone that's come through the Gisborne area, where the trash was a basic problem. And in 2089, the problem was excessive siltation. The very reason why from the cyclone Volta was the siltation was caused by land slippage and scarring. Siltation was the biggest thing. So the existing floodway waterways, we had 5 metre water clearances under bridges reduced to under 1 metre. And that was brought about by the government of the day encouraged land development by way of removing manuka and putting in pine trees. So in removing the existing scrub-covered hills, they even imported Fijian scrub covers to do it. But anyway, Cyclone Boulder came, siltation was a major problem. It filled the waterways and did all the subsequent damage. So it wasn't the slash of the timber which we planted all that slip area. We're now harvesting, which is now the one of the major problems of the debris from Cyclone Gabriel. Yeah. Anyway, the situation in relation to our local issue is that we haven't got a strategic plan, even though we've been working on it for over 15, 20 years. The K3 dam, the proposal was done by Riley's. There was a few things that probably should be mentioned about it. It was quite a comprehensive plan and design, and it was supported by many consultancy things about catchments and all this thing. Anyway, the Kerikeri River represents 69% of the flood potential of the whole area. There are other minor catchments below the dam, and there's the Tukitoka stream, and there's also the another minor catchment. But anyway, the main bulk of the water was Kerikeri River. The dam costing, which was done in 2015, attached to the plan design, was quite comprehensive at the time, but it was inclusive of a 25% contingency sum. So although 13 million at the time included the 25%. So the figures quoted here today didn't mention that fact. Anyway, 25% of it, and whatever it was 2.3 million, which is something to do. So any suggestion that it's going to cost 50 million needs to be checked. And Joe has actually asked for that to be done, but only just recently.
So I'd like to add here that Fred's asking for a particular product, I suppose, from this district council. Well, I think he's doing that because NRC declared a rating area, gone through a local government act consultation process, had been placed with ratings attachment, and he did a change of council in a different direction of interest, and that's what occurred. And because this is a process that Fred can and the committee can submit to, we're trying to get the district council to actually do some stuff that actually starts to embed some solutions. We've identified the problems, we know the problems are from Africa, and we've got to get down to finding the solutions and finding affordable solutions. And it's my job as a regional councillor to drive NRC at that end, but in all fairness, we've had a district council as a member of this river group for this term and other terms, and it never turned up. So Waipapa resident, and that's extremely difficult if you don't have ownership of the farm. Just had another council turned up absolutely regularly who's not on the committee, and really, unless you get that critical mass of energy of both councils trying to working together to achieve the obvious objective, and that's the safety of the Waipapa industrial area without compromising the receiving environment downstream. Yeah, we've got an open situation, so we're trying to use this process to. And I think we've got NRC actually lifting its game up quite well. But we've turned the ship on that one. But we need district council to really come together with NRC on this. It sounds like the staff member over there is giving some good pointers, gentlemen. So,
The other side of the equation, of course, is the district council, which we're now discussing. And I said in my submission, their response to the flooding thing has been less than ideal. And what I'm referring to there is the proliferation of the non-observance of their own building and subdivision. So the Kerikeri floodplain has developed their own intention. And one case that actually even got a report here earlier, a report that said talking specifically about floods, this is a council document, and this is a workshop that was run from the internal staff. And so flow depths and requirements of access are included in the council's engineering standards. Flow depths and velocities are available from the NRC mapping. Flood level standards also sit in the engineering standards. And it goes on to say, council has tried and not been able to refuse subdivision under the Resource Management Act S106. Now, that's actually remarkable because Section 106 of the Resource Management Act lays out quite clearly council's responsibilities. So they've actually located land, buildings and flood paths in the zone without due regard to their own regulations and certainly the resource consent. So by establishing a special zone, it should strengthen the council's resolve to look after its own engineering standards and get away from the staff's position where the staff Farm Office Council can actually refuse to do things that they know is wrong. So it's a very important point. So the establishment of a special zone, then this upcoming district plan, will give them the resolve to actually do something, strengthen their resolve. It also enables the outside interests which are inevitably involved with floods. This is the government, multi-millions expenditure on not only Cyclone Volva, but more recently Cyclone Gabriel. Everywhere where these deficiencies are not addressed, so they have to then come in and backstop the industries, the residents, and all other things. But I pointed out in my 2023 report about the devastation that can occur in relation to this particular series of catchments and the downstream flow of the thing. And it wasn't until Joe actually put the hard word on the council, the regional council, to actually get the latest LiDAR data. And we still haven't received, which should have been ready for this meeting, but the detailed modelling of what came out of the latest zone. So we're having this meeting on the 9th, I believe. But
you know, from what you're saying there, you don't necessarily need a special zone to put into effect what you need. I mean, the idea of putting a special zone into a district plan is quite a big deal. And a number of submitters to this process have probably found that over the last few weeks. But I mean, you could upgrade the provisions that are in the district. If greater regard to given to, you could use an overlay technique on this particular area, like Kerikeri. If there was an overlay where special provisions were taken to take special regard to. I mean, Section 106 of the RMA gives the council the power to decline consent to anything anyhow, given reference to natural hazards and the like. Right. It just seems to me that batting for a special zone may not be achievable. But you yourself have set out number 1-6 on the back page of your evidence, the flood mitigation measures that can take place up the ante in the district plan for the council to have regard to, and that would meet the same objective of having those provisions. I mean, you and I can't guarantee that the council officers can necessarily take regard to them, but are there in the district plan, whereas at the present time, from what you're saying, it may not be sufficient yet. So your submission can be used to upgrade those provisions that are there now.
Well, I hope it does. They've always had Section 106 in the land plans. But when you see the current development, and just a little over 5 or 6 weeks ago, we had less than millimetres of rain and the entire area flooded. There was council zone roads were inundated. The only road that goes down the back of Waipapa.
It's not unusual for it to rain in Northland.
No, that's true. But the provisions under which they've allowed the building consents and the subdivision, their own road at the end of the cul-de-sac or roundabout, and it's covered by 1.2 metres of water.
What we could do is have a closer regard to what the council officers may have recommended in the 42A report. Well, we asked them to have a look at those 6 points that you raised.
Absolutely. It would be, I know slightly of the effort involved in a special zone, but what needs to change is both the regional council and the Far North District Council to start working together.
So, Mr. Chair, I think we've got the picture. I'm conscious we've got two other submitters that we need to squeeze in before we wrap things up.
Yeah.
Just quickly, the council, I mean, was this submission referred to in the 42 report? I'm not sure where.
Yes. Yeah. What I would say is, and you mentioned section 106, and during the life of the existing plan, we have probably quite a considerable portion of the existing development of Waipapa incurred. It was done under a very different section 106, which was always generally unmade. Section 106 has subsequently been amended to promote a more risk-based approach to assessing and considering that risk. And secondly, as well to that, is one of the purposes of this plan is not just to introduce maps, it is the flooding framework from the RPS, which is more of an urgent framework around development. So we are moving forward in a more, robust analysis and management of natural hazards. A district plan is probably not the place to fix natural hazards. We can enable works, but can't require or demand works to resolve that. I think as correctly pointed out, there's a lot of relationship funding. This was part of the economic approach, but part of what we're trying to achieve is part of the system of.
Yeah, thanks. So I think we might have to leave it there. But thank you very much. I mean, it's wonderful to have citizens who give up their time, particularly engineers who retired and should be playing golf, committing their time and energy to still try to achieve outcomes benefit the district. So, on behalf of all the residents, thank you very much for your submission.
Thank you for the hearing.
Okay. Now we have Ian Bridie. Mr. Bridie, are you here?
Yes.
Here, and I will.
I must apologize. I think Mr. Bridie, Mr. Bridie.
Right, yes, correct, yes.
So everyone's not just wait to see how we can do this to get some offices. That'll be it. Hey, everyone. Okay, we'll hand it over to Mr. Bridie.
Good, thank you. I'd like to thank you all for letting me come to speak about my submission. I've given you a copy of my original submission and then a copy of the presentation that I've got today, which incorporates a number of new items that have arisen since I read the section 42A report, which obviously has made some recommendations already. So, AK, if I just push button first.
The right arrow.
Right, okay. Okay, so my name is Ian Bridle. Background is I'm a qualified geologist. I worked for 3 decades in the oil and gas industry, so nothing to do with district planning, but I feel that my planning and risk assessment skills sort of transfer over to your jurisdiction, and I sort of understand where you're coming from with a lot of your zoning and and district planning. So I purchased a property in Kerikeri in the Ridge in 2017, moved back to New Zealand in 2021. And then in 2022, the PDP was issued for review, which I did. And I spoke to the other residents at the Ridge development and told them I was going to make a submission. Once I'd written my submission, I sent it out to them for their comments. I had pretty much unanimous feedback of their backing. Although they said they didn't have the time to have any input or make a presentation, the other residents at the Ridge development are supporting my submission. So that's something that I have done, is I've canvassed the other residents. So only with the correct information can a council make the correct decisions. So I know you've looked at the whole region, and I'm just concentrating on a very small section of Kerikeri. But I feel that since I've lived there a number of years, I know that area better than probably the district and regional planners do. And hopefully you can incorporate my little micro-analysis into your bigger plan and come to the right decision. So we move on. There's a map here, and this is the map from the original PDP. You'll see that the next zone is in, as you know, is in pink. The general residential is in yellow, and the rural residential is in grey. Now, since the PDP came out, there is quite a significant change. You'll see the area that I'm talking about is bordered in red. To the north, directly to the north, is a large grey area that now, in the recommendations report, has been zoned general residential. So that whole area to the north of the top red line will become yellow. That's 23A Aranga Road. So that has now been proposed to become residential. So you'll see that with that one turning yellow, that puts us immediately adjacent to a general residential zone. So rezoning the Ridge to general residential zone allows for a fully cohesive zone. It doesn't split off an island like you were saying that the council are very against forming little islands. It just extends the general residential zone about another 100 metres south along Kerikeri Road. Now, the other thing that you'll notice on this slide is the general residential on the south side of Kerikeri Road. It continues up Kerikeri Road for approximately another 600 metres. So including the Ridge in general residential is quite logical. We're very close to town. We're about 5 minutes walk from the central business district. It just makes sense.
Mr. Bryden, Kerikeri chalets are on the corner, aren't they?
Correct.
Oh, we know this.
Yep. Okay. You know you're 5 minutes walk from the CBD.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it makes...
And 3.5 minutes walk from here.
Yeah. It makes complete sense for this to become residential, general residential. So I'm just going to put all the bullet points up here. I'm not going to tweet. Oh, sorry. There we go. So bullet points are there. I've highlighted the sections of the original PDP that would support rezoning the Ridge development to general residential. It ticks every box as far as I can see. It better achieves the strategic direction and objectives of the PDP, as well as the national policy statement for urban development. It's a 5-minute walk to town. It reduces traffic congestion for people living there, road usage and carbon emissions. We can walk or cycle to town. In fact, my son either walks or cycles to Kerikeri High School on a daily basis. No need for transportation. So it's consolidating the urban growth around the CBD. We walk to the cinema. There's a lot of P120s in Kerikeri. You go to the cinema, movies are more than 2 hours long. You park your car, you get a ticket. So we don't. We walk and we patronise the pubs, the restaurants, the cinema by walking to town and walking home. So it's walking distance to town. All the infrastructure services are available at the Ridge development. Reticulated sewage services were completed in 2022. So when the PDP was written, there would not have been reticulated sewage services. We needed the larger plots to support the waste management. We do not now. We have sewage. Now, on Sarah Trinder's report, it basically states that all rezoning requests were evaluated against a consistent framework, considering location, land use, site suitability, infrastructure, and growth demand. So we'll move on. There's a couple of points here as to why keeping the Ridge at rural residential is in conflict with the strategic direction. RRZ01 states that rural residential zone is to be used predominantly for rural residential activities and small farming activities. All lots on the Ridge development are too small to support any farming activities. No one does it, it's all residential. And RRZ03 is highlighting that rural residential land is to be zoned for urban development in the future. What I'm asking you, since we have everything in place, why wait? For the current land usage, and this is something that Sarah Trinder's report highlighted, that the actual land usage should be taken into consideration as a major factor in potential reclassification. So I do note, and I've read the section 42A report. Mr. McIlrath's, is that correct? Mr. McIlrath report shows that the McIlrath, okay. He stated that the PDP recommendation option, it currently gives sufficient capacity for the short to medium term until 2033. But I would say to you that upzoning the Ridge development, it will complement the aims and strategies of the PDP and the NPSUD with no downside. Upzoning would deliver greater economic benefits due to enabling more residential capacity near the central economic zone of Kerikeri. So the current actual land usage is residential. We have a very big issue with the allowable impermeable cover on rural residential land. It's 12.5%. After that, you need to go for discretionary activity. I can only speak to my lot on this particular aspect, but all lots are similar. Lot 19, 14 the Ridge, I currently have 26.5% impermeable cover. 9.3% of the impermeable cover is the right-of-way passing through my property, so nothing I can do about it. So actual land usage does not reflect the proposed zone. So we're infrastructure ready. I've already mentioned that in 2022, the work was completed by United Civil Construction to supply reticulated sewerage services to everybody on the Ridge. We no longer need the additional land for waste disposal. So we have everything in place. So we satisfy GRZ04. We have adequacy and capacity of all council infrastructure services. And I guess the key takeaway from that previous slide was the key message was the Ridge development is 100% infrastructure ready for upzoning to GRZ without any additional work or any additional cost to council. So again, Sarah Trinder's report goes through 5 reasons in table 5 as to the criteria for rezoning. And I believe we tick every single box in those 5 criteria. So first of all was location. And as I said, we're 300 metres from the Kerikeri CBD, we're 5-minute walk. We're adjacent to an existing general residential zone, including 23 Aranga Road, which has just been recommended to be rezoned. So we fill all the criteria there for the location aspect of it. B was land use. As I said before in my previous slide, all the residents at the ridge use the land for residential purposes, not for small farming activities or urban activities. And then we have site suitability. So I heard a lot in the previous submissions about flood-prone areas. So I've highlighted this as site suitability. The subject site is not prone to flood or coastal hazards, being between 60 and 100 metres above mean sea level. The site that we're located at the ridge, it slopes to the northwest down to the Puketotara stream. So there's good runoff, there's never been a flooding issue, and as far as I believe, there never will be. So site is suitable for upzoning. Infrastructure, as we've just seen, we have adequate development infrastructure servicing the entire area under consideration. And growth demand. Now, you have stated that you have sufficient capacity with the proposed district plan under the recommended option, but rezoning would not undermine the growth objectives of the spatial plan. It would, given the proximity of our location to central Kerikeri, it can only enhance the objectives of the spatial plan. And finally, there's been a number of, since 2022, there's been a number of changes to the National Policy Statement that also support upzoning the location in question. This is the ridge development. Freeing up land for urban development, increasing development capacity, improving the land use flexibility, which is something we're hampered with under the rural residential, and removing unnecessary planning barriers. At the moment, if we want to do anything else to our land, we need to go for special permission. Going to general residential would allow us more flexibility. So I would like to thank you for your consideration of my submission. There's just a couple of backup slides that I put in this afternoon. First of all is the table that I went through to say that we tick every box in that table. We meet all the criteria for upzoning. Next is a picture of 23A Aranga. This is 23 Aranga Road. This, you'll see down in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a piece of wood. That is the boundary between the Aranga Road property and my property. I'm taking this picture from the boundary of my property. That is looking down towards the Puketotara stream. This is looking up towards Kerikeri Road. Now, I don't know who got the inside information, but 23 Aranga Road has already started intensive development. Even though they're classed as rural residential at the moment, someone started to put in some serious infrastructure, roading and all kinds of other retaining banks and development in anticipation of going to general residential zone. So there's already been a head start, and this is taken from my property. You'll see that the tree in the bottom right of this picture, that again is a tree on the boundary with my property. So they got a heads up. I don't know how, but the intensification has already commenced in that property. And all I'm saying is bring the intensification further across and allow us to do what we want to do with our property. It just makes sense. So in summary, I would like to ask the members here to consider that our development is already zoned general residential, which I think it fits, it ticks every box. If someone came along and said we want to change that rich development to rural residential, I can't see any supporting reason why you would do it. And if there's no supporting reason, to have it as rural residential, then by default, it should be general residential. So I'd like the members of the panel to not ask why we should upzone the ridge, but why not?
Okay, thank you. Would you like to just stay and ask some questions?
Yes, sure.
Can I just ask the officers if there's the infrastructure man? Yeah.
Infrastructure man is not in the political.
So, there was no information submitted to.
I suspect the nature of the question is if it got upzoned, how would it cope?
No information.
No information.
Council to review.
Every lot now has available connection to the reticulated sewage.
So that isn't so much the point, Mr. Bridle, it's whether there's capacity. I mean, whilst a number of properties that we've heard evidence on right throughout this hearing and the previous hearing, they said, yes, we've got a connection.
Yes.
What we want, we need to understand is what is the capacity. In particular, the wastewater treatment plant's ability to process the wastewater, not just connect to it. But I'm struggling to remember Mr. Hensley. Well, he'll be back on Wednesday, won't he?
I believe,
Yeah.
Tuesday, tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
Oh,
Okay, so
Sorry.
He's, no, he's not going to be available.
Wednesday, I think he's going to come back to the summer.
No, he wasn't at all available, he had other commitments, but he would make himself available as we needed.
Well, I'm just sort of wondering whether we could just put that point to him and have an answer from him, happily to have it direct through one of the officers about capacity.
That is one link. I know the restriction on the number of lots that we service by the right as well, and development capacity of that site. There's a whole bunch of questions that we wouldn't get the answers to in terms of the practical development of that site. So yes, that's one link. It's difficult for them to see or understand that we can rezone it and the front lots can subdivide and there is no effective change, for example, to the rear lots in the yes, general residential, they have no additional capacity due to the road, nature of the road. So it lends itself to probably a small structure plan, at least under consideration.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Mr. Bridle, the thing that we're wrestling with is capacity and the duty that we have is to almost pointless to rezone land if you can't do the right infrastructure. I think that's possibly one of the things that we need to get our heads around.
Yeah, it's again, it's not correct, it's strategically identified. It's just a matter of information that we have to. I guess there's just a few curly bits in it before we want to push it over on the rezoning. It's probably no additional information.
Certainly, all the points that you've made today, we note those.
Yep.
We just need that other question, and it might just have to wait until we write a reply before we get any response. And that response might be we can't tell you right now.
Right, sure.
But it might be something that might occur as part of another process, if not this.
Right.
Would that be a fair summary? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Well, you obviously put quite a bit of effort into this. And
Yeah, no, it's, well, I do have the
I
backing.
have one more question for you.
Yes.
You do speak for the other home.
I do, that's what I put effort into it.
It's like you haven't got one person who says, no.
I do have the backing of
The vast majority.
Yes, one person came back to me, most of it was verbal, yes, we definitely agree with your submission. One person came back to me and said, in principle, I agree with your submission, I'd like to know what effect it would have on my rates bill.
What did you tell them?
I said, if the problem is that the land value goes up, your rates bill will go up.
And what was their response?
Their response was, it would depend how much. So generally, I've got unanimous backing of this, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Generally unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. And well, I think that brings us to our final submission of the day.
No, we've got one more.
Yes.
Kerikeri Heights Limited, Mr. David.
Yeah, it's also our final, that wasn't our final, this brings us to our Kerikeri Heights. As I said, it brings us to our final.
It's been a long day.
I wasn't saying that was.
Interesting day.
No.
Good
Saving the best to last. Good afternoon, Mr. McClellan. Are you David McClellan?
David McClellan.
Yes.
Yes.
And you're from Kerikeri Heights Limited. Can you just refresh us as to where that is?
Literally across the road.
Over there?
Yeah.
Right. Certainly.
It's quite handy that we're in this building.
Okay, well, we'll hand it over to you.
Just a little bit of background. I've been living and developing land and projects in Kerikeri for about 25 years now, and had GG Gardeners franchise in Kerikeri, running over 261 homes, so been quite heavily involved in the district. Several reasons that I think 372 Kerikeri Road should be rezoned, which I put most of in my submission, but just reiterate. I think number one would be the location. Must have been close to town. Walkability, 8 minutes to the middle of the town, 2 minutes on the bike, downhill, maybe 3 or 4 minutes back up, but yeah, it's an electric one, you get the quicker. Helping reduce the traffic, CBD issues that we have, or parking issues that we have, etc. The site at 372 is fully serviced. All services are on the boundary, including water, wastewater, chorus, and power that I put in for stage 1 of the project, and the power actually covers stage 2. By several new homes at this development next door here at 373, that you can see in the window, go across Kerikeri Road and hook into the sewage at my boundary. So they're all there. Item 3, the spatial plan, which I've been working quite closely with quite a few of the guys on as an interested party, has been adopted, and the preferred option being option D, which includes part of my land, Kerikeri South. I really think that at this stage the council could commit to more of that adopted plan for the future. Benefit of density on a greenfield site. We talked about that earlier on. I heard somebody talking about costing, etc. I don't think it's about the cost. I think it's more about being able to design from start to finish, rather than like the ridge that the previous guys just spoken about, done a long time ago. But there are 4 sections in there that are 4,000 squares at the beginning. They all have land covenants on them, so they can't actually be chopped into any smaller unless everyone agrees. So restrictions from future, which happens a lot in Kerikeri. I would say that not everyone wants to live in the centre of Kerikeri in an apartment with very little outside space. If they did, we would be having that already. Just historically, GG Garden customers that have come from Auckland and everywhere throughout New Zealand, 9 out of 10 want a piece of space, piece of ground around, which is why they come to Kerikeri. The benefit of density means that we can then create affordability. It's a huge issue. I think we can build different housing typologies as we've discussed, terrace, duplex, etc. But we can also offer different build options. Rent to buy to rent, and create more affordable homes for young people of Kerikeri. Rezoning now would give certainty around infrastructure, allowing time to plan and commit to new developments. Developers, we just can't go in there and do something tomorrow. The property since 2017, and the first house built was 2022 on stage 1. So it takes a while to get infrastructure in there and everything else. But having a commitment from council would certainly help.
historically. Ranelagh, for example, which is a central Kerikeri development, took 15 years, 2003 to 2018 to complete. The Bings land, as an example, which was rezoned in 2009 in the district plan as residential. It was 12 years before we see a house. So I think we need to encourage development slightly further out of how agreement to get the future security. I think leaving areas around town on the peripheral of town without certainty is a kind of disservice. My option at the moment is rural living. I could go and do 3,000 square metre sections on it tomorrow. Unfortunately, that's a disservice to Kerikeri in the future. So we need some idea of timing and zoning to come back in the future.
So just looking at your property on the planning map, it's quite a large property. It's rural residential, but it hasn't been subdivided to be residential. What's the principal reason for that?
Well, I've done stage one at the rear, so it's 3,000 squares.
Oh, I see. It was part of an even larger.
Yeah.
Did you put in Highland Way there?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so the properties that are accessed off Highland Way cul-de-sac, which adjoins to Greenaway Place. Those have been the developments you've done today.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is general.
Please.
I suppose the same comments that you gave to Mr. Bridle.
Yeah.
We have to give to you, because we acknowledge that there is infrastructure in the road.
Yep.
The question is capacity.
I know exactly.
And the council's trying to allocate future capacity to its intensification and its other greenfield areas. So I suppose it's about whether that can be accommodated in it as well. The other thing too is that if that were to go residential, it sort of begs the question: what happens between Greenaway Place and the ridge, whether that's zoned or not?
Yep.
That might sort of actually end up being like a little pocket of residential on that side of the road. So those sorts of things that you have to consider. Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
No. Did you say expressing?
Yeah. I was going to say Dito when Mr. Brindle left, but very similar. Only slightly further up the road.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were submitted to the spatial plan?
Yes.
And you're involved in that process?
I just need to come along and give you a little bit more information, or just back up my submission, I suppose.
Any quick clarifications from council officers?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was a fallback position that you had for the site. Fallback is 3,000 squares or possibly 2 in the DDP. So instead of full, yeah.
So under the recommended provisions for rural residential, I think it's a controlled activity, you can get down to 2,000 squares, is that right? Discretionary, yes. So that would possibly be the fallback.
Oh yeah, fallback position, yeah, but I've been waiting for best part 2.5, more than that, 2.5, 3 years through the spatial planning thing, just to see where things will go.
Yes.
And obviously spatial planning is going to zone D, Kerikeri South. So it's, to me, it seems like a waste of residential land, which could be designed as a one-off with space, parking, parks, etc., rather than trying to infill what we've got. Well, it's a combination of infilling what we've got.
I've got a question about that info aspect. I can see we've got our economists with offices still here, because you said it takes about 15 years, as you said, from doing that from subdivision to actually physically have the houses there.
Yeah, you talk about Ranny, that
Yeah.
well, basically because it was a stage development, it was quite heavily involved in that. So the reason behind that was because by doing it staged, it meant that the developer could keep the land price up rather than flood the market with the sections. So it's very clever. It was the only residential land in Kerikeri that had sewage connection at the time. So it just helped to price up, and that's why it took 15 years.
I think the officers that talked about in terms of supplying, if we do the zoning, essentially when we actually get people building. And you've said that you've built houses before.
Yeah.
In Kerikeri. In terms of infill, you've only done greenfield, you haven't done infill.
No, I've done some infill as well.
You've done infill?
Yeah, yeah. In Ranry, a couple of sections that were cut them in half, and put 2 rooms instead of a single. 2 beddies instead of 4 beddies, just to try and mix it around a bit. That's a good way to do it. It is a good way to use it. You've got your connections at your door, existing house, so you can split off into a more cost effective way sometimes of doing it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Sitting here patiently all day.
It's been an interesting day.
Too.
Yeah, it's an interesting day. Thank you very much. And we'll move.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just note that the submitters is light. Including previous of landowners in the area that identified an interest. I know wouldn't say it's completely unique, but the submitters land from recollection actually is exempt. And also streets up front. There's a progression of development, so it's not some in terms of what the spatial can identify. So the progression of development in terms of high density in the road side towards the rear. So it's a significant opportunity to, I guess, highlight, identify the capability of that need.
I'm not really sure where you're coming from on this.
We might speak more over a while.
Okay, so what you're saying is that there might be an opportunity for something.
Maybe.
Yeah. Part, but not necessarily all. Is that what you're suggesting?
We'll formulate something. Probably not a 5:15 on Monday.
So should we conclude to say you want to have another think about it, further think about it?
Yeah, I think too that it would be helpful to understand the aspirations of the panel as well. There's quite a few areas, as I say, there's a considerable block that hit from existing down within spatial plan. It'd be interested to hear where the panel is thinking as opposed to staff.
Well, we'll have a rethink about it before we wrap things up on Wednesday. Obviously, capacity is the thing that we're all got to be constrained by, but other than that, we've got an open mind. So, we'll put a bit further discussion, and then we'll, and there might be more to say to it when we wrap things up on Wednesday. Okay. And then, you know that with each hearing, the council officers, within an agreed period of time of hearing the evidence, they come back with what we call a right of reply, where they respond with all the evidence, including yours, and revisit their recommendations So there might be some further news when that comes in. Okay, well, without anything else to be raised before we wrap up for the night?
Mr. Fisher?
No, thank you.
I think we're done for the day, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, look, we got through a tremendous amount today, and we all paced ourselves accordingly, and we all managed to have enough to eat. So we'll see you all tomorrow. We're going to slightly reconfigure the arrangement of the room so that we can have submitters here, and we might sort of push that way, but AK and I'll have sort of a chat about that now. But until tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, we are adjourned following a Kerikeri.
Process. Ko hiri, ko ramarama, ko o te whakaaro, ko o te tangata, ko o te aroha. Te pau I hiri me nei ia tātou, mauri ora kia tātou, haumie, huie, tākie. I will stop the recording.